This, ladies and gentlemen, is the last time. Finally, after so much fighting, they managed to corner the Demon King. Our protagonist, Kai, from the weakest class, is a dark mage. He remembers his beloved Colette and is determined to finally kill the Demon King. But suddenly, the Demon King attacks them, and one of his party members asks Kai to stop his movements. The protagonist then uses a skill called Bloodbind, and immediately the ability starts to take effect. The protagonist orders the binds to imprison the Demon King. The binds rush forward and seize him, preventing him from moving. Kai then yells for Ares to finish the blow. Ares smiles and advances, brandishing his sword. Out of nowhere, he plunges his sword into Kai, his older brother, making him vomit blood. With the strike, he manages to pierce both his brother and the Demon King. Kai, stunned, asks why his brother did that. The protagonist falls to the ground, nearly lifeless, while his brother lets out a malicious laugh and shouts that he managed to kill the Demon King, and, with that, has become the true hero. Kai turns with great difficulty and asks again why his brother did that. Ares, a stronger class hero, retorts, asking why Kai is surprised. He continues to smile uncontrollably and says that having a shitty dark mage for an older brother was disgraceful, emphasizing that Kai was too presumptuous to try to steal his glory. Johann, a high-class saint, also comments that having an evil dark mage as a companion in the best classes, even if it was a trial sent by God, was still too absurd. Kai, fallen and unable to do anything, asks what they're talking about and emphasizes that he always used his dark magic to help them. The redhead, hearing this, laughs uncontrollably. Her name is Elsa, an arcane swordswoman of ultra-rare class. She points out that Kai was really damn presumptuous and that his class is horrendous. Kai, disappointed, thinks he worked hard for the past 5 years to get there, and now he was just one step away. He begins to remember the past. When they turned 15, everyone receives a special ability from God called a class. That day, Kai received the Dark Mage class, a class specialized in dark magic, hated for having more affinity with demons than with humans, being the weakest among all dark attribute classes. It is known by everyone as a failed class. Elsa, stepping on the protagonist's head, says that despite everything, they would still treat Trash with that class as human, but his share would decrease if he came back alive, so it would be better for him to die already. Ares holds the sword, still stuck in his brother, and cruelly twists it, saying that with that, sweet Colette will be his. The protagonist screams with all the pain and hatred he was feeling. He remembers the past again, when his beloved Colette's father told them that the Dark Mage and Saint classes don't match, so the engagement would be broken off. Colette screamed, saying no, that was an exaggeration, and that she loved Kai. Her father ignored her and ordered her to say goodbye to him, as that would be the last day he would allow them to have contact. She, speechless, passed by the guards, disappointed, and began to remove her bracelet. She gave the bracelet to Kai and asked him to keep it. The two looked at each other, filled with sadness, and still holding Kai's hand, she said her final farewell. Kai felt shattered by it. Colette turned around and said that one day they would meet again, and that was a promise. Returning to the present, Ares continued laughing compulsively. He approached the protagonist and said she asked him to kill him, and so did their father. Their father was the strongest knight of the Sacred Kingdom and trained several fearless heroes. He is the head of the prestigious Austin family. Kai remembered his father saying they didn't need a filthy dark mage in the family, but if he participated in the subjugation of the Demon King, he would allow him to return to the Austin family. Kai, confused, asks about subjugating the Demon King. His father also said he would ensure that Kai rekindled the engagement with his childhood friend, Colette. Shortly after that, Colette was confined to a room in the royal palace and used to cast a large barrier to protect the sacred city. If Kai defeated the Demon King, she would be freed and they would marry, living a happy and peaceful life together. Kai remembers all the effort he put in to restore his father's trust and win Colette back. killing monsters and overcoming all challenges until he finally reached conjuring level 999. And yet, back to the present, his brother sarcastically says it's a shame. The older brother was killed by the Demon King, and the younger brother survived because he was unbeatable. As life fades from his body, Kai concludes that he was just a pawn in the hands of Ares and their father. He curses, unable to accept it all. Ares, holding the sword, says that finally, Kai won't be a bother anymore. He tells his brother to rest easy, as he will take good care of Colette so he can die in peace. The protagonist, trembling, reflects that if he had known this would happen, he would have run away with his beloved far away, without caring about others or common sense. He would have just pursued happiness. Suddenly, he remembers the bracelet and hears his beloved's voice asking him not to die. Kai laments everything, wishing he could have seen Colette one last time. On a sunny day, birds are singing at the window, and a voice appears. Kai, how long are you going to sleep? Suddenly, the protagonist wakes up. He gets up, astonished, wondering what the hell happened. He feels short of breath and starts sweating cold. Noticing that Colette is there, he becomes confused, thinking she should be imprisoned, and wonders what she is doing there. Colette asks what happened, as he looks startled and covered in sweat. The protagonist doesn't answer. He only tries to understand why he is there, and without any injuries. Suddenly, he screams, asking what is going on, and the young woman, with a sweet expression, simply replies, "Good morning, Kai." Completely confused and still sweating cold, Kai looks at his beloved, thinking that something is strange, as she should be in her 20s now, but she looks younger. Colette, with a concerned expression, comments that he's still half asleep and reminds him that today is an important day for them. She asks if he's okay. The protagonist, covering up, apologizes and says he's still a little drowsy. Suddenly, seeing his reflection in the mirror, he is shocked to realize that he too looks younger. The young woman asks him to wake up once and for all, saying with all the excitement that today is the day of the class revelation ceremony, and she's looking forward to it. While Kai remains completely astonished, he asks if the ceremony is really today. Grabbing her shoulders, he asks what year it is, leaving her startled. Getting very close to her, he desperately asks if he is not yet a dark mage, leaving the young woman speechless. The protagonist wonders if this is a dream when suddenly, Colette pushes him back and awkwardly says he was too close. Kai apologizes for that and continues pondering if this is a dream or if he has gone back in time. The protagonist raises his arm and is shocked to realize that he still has the heraldry. Colette is also astonished and asks if that is a heraldry and why he already has a class. Kai reflects that if he really went back to the past, he shouldn't have a heraldry yet, as it's only received after the class revelation ceremony. Out of nowhere, Kai asks to display status, and the status screens open, indicating class, Dark Mage, level 999, skills, none. Kai concludes that his status remained the same as before his death. Suddenly, he notices the message, status locked, second entry. He is left speechless by that. The protagonist thinks that crazy things have been happening one after the other, and that there is only one thing he understands so far. At this very moment, he is in the past. He wonders if this is some kind of magic, but quickly changes his mind, as it's beyond any existing type of magic, and no one could do something like this, not even the Demon King. However, he remembers hearing Colette's voice before losing consciousness. Suddenly, Colette calls him back to reality, asking if he's okay since he seemed lost in thought. She asks again about the heraldry. Suddenly, the bracelet starts to slip off the bed, falling to the floor with a noise. Colette notices and quickly picks it up, saying she thought she had lost it, but it was there the whole time. Kai remembers the bracelet and Colette's words when she gave him the jewel. "I promise we will meet again." Suddenly, Kai gets up, thinking that he finally understands. Looking at his beloved, he deduces that her bracelet held the power of the saint she possesses. He starts laughing to himself, leaving the young woman confused. Out of nowhere, he hugs her, saying it was all her. that now he knows what will happen and he can change the future. Colette, still confused, asks if he is a dark mage. The protagonist doesn't respond, only thinking that he can prevent Colette's imprisonment and her death. Still hugging her, he says that he will never let anyone take her from him again. The young woman widens her eyes, surprised, and asks what he is talking about. Kai realizes that she doesn't know anything and apologizes, trying to avoid explaining what's happening. Colette, slightly upset, says it's not that she didn't like it, but he hugged her so suddenly that it startled her. After all, they are engaged, so even if he wants that, Kai, embarrassed, quickly interrupts her. The young woman says it's okay. Kai, disappointed, comments that the engagement will be complicated when his family finds out he's a dark mage. Colette just listens, and he continues saying that people say dark mages are like demons. He remembers his father saying they didn't need a filthy dark mage in their house. The young woman, with a serene expression, says she doesn't see a difference between a dark mage and other classes, and emphasizes that he is still himself, after all. The protagonist, relieved, thinks that after everything, she remains the same person as always. He believes she didn't even change her attitude when she found out he was a dark mage, even with everyone hating him. Still, she extended her hand to him, and for that reason, he can't trust any other human, only his beloved. The protagonist begins to approach her, telling her not to be scared by what he's going to say. Colette, concerned, asks what happened. Kai shows his hand, explaining that he came back 5 years from the future, and now, the man before her is a level 999 dark mage. In shock, she replies, questioning him about being from the future and about that absurd level. He turns and says he will show her proof. The protagonist begins to use magic on his finger, which soon envelops the whole room, and he proclaims for the archdemon to rise from the depths. Suddenly, a giant demon appears with a terrifying roar. Colette almost faints upon seeing it and asks how that's possible. The demon continues with a frightening aura, making a horrible noise. Kai, still casting the spell, explains that level 999 dark mages can make pacts with high-level demons like archdemons. He remembers that the pact he made for the first time is still active, which shows that he will be able to use all the dark magic he learned without difficulty. The most important thing, this proves his theory was correct. Looking at Colette, he thinks they dreamed of meeting again, and the dream came true. However, he needs to hurry because there's no more time, as the class revelation ceremony is today, and the Demon King is born today. The giant demon kneels before the protagonist, leaving the young woman terrified. The demon asks Kai please to give him an order, and Kai, with his power, gives a slight smile. The protagonist, with magic at his fingertips, turns around and apologizes for scaring Colette, explaining that it was proof that he really is a level 999 dark mage. With a smile, she replies that yes, she believes him, and that she never doubted him, since he's not one to lie, but she admits that it scared her. Suddenly, Kai calls her, and taking her hands, he says that he's heard that not even 10 holy knights could defeat an archdemon. He also mentions that dark mages can't learn skills, but in return, they can master all types of magic and use many powerful spells. Colette finds it all incredible. The protagonist loses some of his excitement, and remembering his beloved in prison, he says she needs to listen carefully to what he has to say. She looks at him attentively. Kai explains that today she will receive the class of Saint, and Ares will receive the class of Hero. Excited, she says that another hero will be born in the Austin family, but the protagonist quickly interrupts, saying that this is a bad thing because if Ares becomes a hero, suddenly someone appears at the door. It's Ares himself, asking if his brother called him. The protagonist looks suspiciously at him, and both are shocked. Ares, curious, asks where the archdemon is. Kai and Colette are nervous about the situation, and as Ares approaches, the protagonist quietly asks if the archdemon has already left. He looks at the ground and notices that it's gone, while Colette remains tense. Ares asks what archdemon his brother is talking about, and questions if his brother was talking behind his back. He comments that it's pathetic for a hero candidate to talk about others. Colette, irritated, responds that Kai wasn't talking behind his back. Aries approaches her and whispers in her ear, asking why, instead of staying with Kai, she doesn't stay with him. The protagonist immediately pushes him away from her, shoving him back, and with a serious look, tells him to leave. Aries immediately starts drawing his sword, asking what will happen if he doesn't want to leave. The protagonist doesn't back down and steps forward. He gets close to the portal through which the demon is summoned, and his hand begins trembling, eager to summon it. His brother notices the trembling hand, but unable to see that he is wielding power, comments that he's trembling in fear. The two glare at each other with hatred, while Colette grows nervous about the situation. But suddenly, someone arrives asking for permission to speak. It's a servant, informing Aries that the Duke is calling him. Aries quickly turns around and, sheathing his sword, says he's on his way. The protagonist feels relieved, and Colette remains scared. Kai calls her to leave as well, and the two depart, leaving Aries alone. In another place, they feel calmer, and the young woman smiles, relieved. Meanwhile, Aries remains filled with anger. Walking through the city streets, the protagonist comments that going out into the city and seeing so many people makes him feel nostalgic. Colette responds that it must have been a long time for him. Suddenly, someone calls him Kaisama, and he, confused, remembers that in the past, people used to respectfully address him that way. A cheerful merchant thanks him for dealing with Gorotsuki the other day. Walking through the market, Kai realizes that no one here knows he's a dark mage yet. Continuing their walk, the young woman tells him that everyone here likes him because he's always worked hard. She looks at him with admiration. Upon arriving at a park, the protagonist says they need to continue their conversation, and she quickly agrees. He continues by saying that later, at the ceremony, Aries will receive the class of hero, but soon after, he will make a mistake, as all heroes do. And because of Aries, the Demon King Griselda will be born, and in just 3 days, the Sacred Kingdom will fall. Colette can't believe what she's hearing, and the protagonist emphasizes that, to be precise, the kingdom will remain, but half of the people will die, and to protect what remains of the sacred city, a great barrier will be conjured. But to maintain the protection, she will be imprisoned in the royal palace. And on top of all that, he will receive the class of Dark Mage, which will lead to his exile from the Austen family, resulting in their separation. Colette, desperate, says she doesn't want that, emphasizing that she wants to stay with him forever. The protagonist is astonished to hear that, and with a smile on his face, asks if she accepts to go with him, saying they will live together. Colette turns red as a beet, and with a trembling voice, asks if that was a marriage proposal. She runs to hug him, saying she is very happy and that they will be together forever. While embracing her, the protagonist thinks that in his first life, he was very foolish, as he should have done this from the start. With a regretful look, he realizes that he should have given her that hug a long time ago. Sometime later, Colette is already mounted on a horse, and the protagonist asks her to hide in the village of Lacus for a while, as the chaos of the war won't reach there. She must arrive at the village within 3 days. Worried, she asks if he won't go with her. The protagonist bites his lips and says he needs to stop his brother Aries and prevent the birth of the Demon King. Colette says she understands because that's what is expected of her fiancé, always doing his best to protect others. She then departs, waving her hand and saying she'll be waiting for him. Kai, smiling, says he will resolve everything there and soon meet her, and closing his eyes, he says it's a promise. But he thinks that, in truth, his fiancé is wrong because he isn't doing it for the good of everyone, but for his own good. He will save Griselda from his brother Aries before she becomes the Demon King, and start a relationship with the demons, as their help will be essential to face his future pursuers. After all, he discovered that, in reality, the battle wasn't against the Demon King. He remembers Griselda, the Demon King, furious after finally finding the enemy of her friend Sasha, while the confused hero didn't even know what he had done, leaving Griselda even more enraged. The protagonist reflects that no one would have imagined that the bringer of peace, the hero, would cause the destruction of humanity, and If he manages to save Sasha, Griselda's friend, maybe he can prevent her from becoming the Demon King. With frightening and fully concentrated power, Kai says that now his rebellion against fate will begin. Sometime later, descending a dark staircase, Ares holds a whip in his hand, saying this is the last time he will ask. With her hands chained, a woman spits blood, which was already spreading across the floor. It was Griselda, completely wounded by Ares, who commands her, kill Kai. He looks directly into her eyes and orders again that she kill Kai. The young woman, even in that situation, doesn't back down and insults him, saying she doesn't take orders from filthy scum like him. Ares then whips her once more, saying that apparently she still hasn't learned what happens when she disobeys his orders. Griselda endures the blows firmly, and noticing her shackles, realizes they are for magical restraint. She says that if it weren't for them, Ares would already be dead. Ares begins to approach her again and calmly asks what she's going to do. He looks at her with superiority and steps closer, emphasizing that she is his slave and should know her place. Extremely irritated, he orders her once again to kill Kai at that moment, emphasizing that the prophecy says the hero will arise that day, and it will probably be his bastard brother. Ares remembers Khalit and Kai together, and comments that if Kai truly becomes a hero, Khalit will definitely marry him. Angry, he shouts that it would be absurd, and that he will not allow it, leaving the young woman frightened. He continues, saying that Khalit and the hero class must belong to him. Ares starts explaining that a hero possesses overwhelming fighting power, a light attribute chosen as the strongest by God, and being special is a hero's privilege. He can enter others' homes without permission, steal, break property, and everything classified as a hero's privilege is allowed by law. Enthralled by the idea, he asks if that isn't amazing, emphasizing that no one can oppose the only existence capable of defeating the Demon King. Excited, he continues commenting that if he becomes a hero, he can take any woman he wants. Imagining the women, he salivates, saying he really wants to be the hero. He remembers his brother and shouts that if he kills Kai, he will surely receive the hero class, and that was his last chance. Griselda listens to everything and responds that there is no honor in that, and calls him filthy for only thinking about the women he could get. Enraged, Ares slaps her hard and, humiliating her, asks if she knows why he bought her. Griselda, even in pain, responds, telling him not to underestimate her, for she is a proud vampire with the blood of the Demon King running through her veins, and she will not do what he wants, even if he kills her. Ares insults her again and says he spent all his money on her. Drawing his sword, he says that in that case, he'll do as she prefers. He raises the sword, preparing to strike, and says he's going to kill her while she screams in fear. She closes her eyes, awaiting the blow, as Ares tells her to regret her choice in the afterlife. Suddenly, another girl screams, begging him to stop and pleading for her friend's life, and Griselda, crying, is surprised to see that her friend Sasha had woken up, telling her to stay quiet. Sasha insists that she won't be silent, even if it's an order from Griselda-sama. She continues, saying she'll kill Kai in Griselda's place, so Ares could free her friend. Suddenly, Ares kicks her in the head and, stepping on her, asks if she's sure she'll go in Griselda's place. Mockingly, he says she's just a low-level demon, and Kai is the prodigy of the Austin family. Sasha is terrified upon seeing the sword, and suddenly, he strikes Sasha swiftly, making her scream in pain. Griselda, desperate, cries out for her friend and calls Ares a scoundrel. Ares hears this, surprised, and gives a wicked smile. He grabs Sasha by the chin and, with disdain, asks if that maid is important to her. He starts laughing, making Griselda feel powerless. He continues, saying that demons wanting to act like humans are a joke. Ares places his sword on Sasha's neck and starts commenting that his father used to do this kind of thing a lot. He makes a small cut on the young girl's neck, leaving her friend terrified. Spreading his arms, He says he'll give her one last chance, asking her to say she will obey Arisama's orders and admit that she's trash, but will be a faithful servant of Arisama. Aris emphasizes that she only needs to repeat what he said and asks if, even as a dumb demon, she can manage that. Griselda says that it's too much humiliation, and Aris, still pointing his sword at Sasha's neck, threatens to kill her dear friend. Griselda grits her teeth in distress seeing that. Ares then raises his sword, preparing the blow, but suddenly Griselda begs him to stop, trembling with fear of losing her friend. Sasha, even in that situation, tells Griselda not to worry about her. Griselda, despite this, says she needs her friend and begins to cry. With a trembling, weak voice, she says she will obey Arisama. Sasha is shocked and says she can't humiliate herself like that she must keep her pride. Griselda is moved by hearing that and continues crying. Ares, confused by the dialogue, comments to himself that those two filthy beings are ignoring him. With his sword on his shoulder, he starts talking and, with a cold look, says, "Die!" He grabs his sword and strikes swiftly, but before the blow hits anyone, a loud noise comes from the cell bars. Ares stops his strike and, looking at the cell door, can't believe what he's seeing. A dark magic takes over the entire place, destroying the cell bars. Sasha and Griselda are terrified, looking to see what was happening. Amid the dust, only a silhouette was visible, emanating powerful magic. When the dust settles, Kai appears, looking at Griselda, who was stunned to see him and to notice the mark on his hand. Kai uses his magic and shouts for Ares to stop. Ares, with his sword raised, is confused to see his brother there. Kai then prepares a powerful punch and, with dark magic in his fist, hits Ares violently, sending him flying against the wall and coughing up blood from the impact. Griselda and Sasha are impressed by the blow, while Kai remains serious. He begins to approach, and, when near the girls, says, "Thank God I arrived in time." Ares remains on the ground, almost unconscious from the force of the punch. Griselda, in shock, asks who he is. Kai notices her pointed ears and says that she's probably Griselda, asking if a little girl like her would really become the Demon King. Griselda, confused, wonders about this Demon King and asks what he's talking about. Looking at the other young woman, Kai asks if she, then, is Sasha. The young woman, nearly fainting, calls out for Griselda. The protagonist, seeing that, wonders how his brother could have done such a disgusting act. Griselda, still not understanding anything, asks Kai how he knows their names, but Kai immediately asks her to wait a bit. He raises his hand and proclaims a black healing magic. He casts the magic on Sasha, who immediately begins to heal. She closes her eyes, feeling the relief of the healing in her wounds. Griselda, in shock, exclaims that he healed all her wounds at once, and Kai, focused, says that he will also heal her wounds. Looking at her, Kai thinks that Griselda has always been his enemy, but the girl in front of him now is not the same Demon King who killed thousands of innocents. She's just a poor little girl who was made a slave. The protagonist then casts his healing magic on her, and she immediately begins to heal completely. Kai then casts the spell, Break Bonds, and all the shackles start to crumble. Griselda is astonished, as all her wounds have healed, and even the slavery magic had disappeared. Touching her face, she wonders how that was possible in just an instant. Soon, the two girls embrace, relieved to have escaped that situation, and, crying, the two shout that they are finally free. Kai watches with relief and thinks that everything is finally okay. Sasha, still very emotional and crying, comments that when her territory was taken by Elsa, the demon hunter, she thought it was the end of everything. Kai hears this and turns, asking about Elsa and if she's a red-haired arcane swordswoman. Griselda, irritated, asks if he knows Elsa, and the protagonist responds that yes, he knows her very well. The two become furious hearing that, and Sasha immediately asks if he is an ally of Elsa. Kai, also irritated, shouts that he most certainly is not. He starts explaining that Elsa invaded demon territory to destroy them with an army of adventurers, and her purpose was always money. She made a fortune kidnapping and selling demons, and since the victims were all demons, humans always supported her. And thanks to her fame and skill, she joined the heroes group at only 17 years old. Kai, still irritated, says that just thinking about being her ally makes him want to vomit. Griselda remains suspicious, looking seriously at the protagonist, but says she still has to thank him, as he is her savior and will have her sincere gratitude. She asks for his name, and he promptly says his name is Kai Austin. Griselda says she now understands, so he is Ari's brother. She asks if Kai isn't a hero candidate and why he is helping demons. Kai ignores the question and asks if she would accept a partnership. Griselda is intrigued by the question. Kai, lowering his head and showing the mark on his hand, says there's no place for him in human society anymore. Griselda is astonished to see the mark and points out that it's the black heraldry, affirming that he's a black mage. Sasha says she now understands why he can use black magic, but still suspicious, says it's strange. She recalls all the spells he used and comments that he can cast 2 high-level spells simultaneously, something that can't be achieved at his age. Griselda agrees, saying he's still suspicious, but he did save them. The protagonist, lost in thought, ponders his brother's actions. Sasha, with a suspicious look, calls her friend. Griselda, determined, says it doesn't matter, she trusts him. Sasha then starts telling the protagonist that Ares wanted to kill him to get the hero class. Kai is shocked to hear that, and, looking at Ares, who was still battered from the punch, wonders why he's been trying to kill him all this time. Griselda proudly says that obviously she refused to obey Ares' orders, as true demons wouldn't participate in such filthy acts, and her friend Sasha applauds her for her beautiful words. She laughs, proud of her friend, who gets embarrassed. Griselda continues, saying that if Kai hadn't shown up, she would have lost a very important friend. Kai remembers the Demon King and thinks he'll never forgive his brother and that he has finally found Sasha's enemy. He looks to the side and sees the cheerful girls. Kai realizes he finally understands everything because, in the other timeline, Ares killed Sasha and Griselda fell into despair, developing hatred against humanity, which led her to kill thousands of innocents. Standing in front of his brother, who is now on the verge of unconsciousness, Kai points out that it was all that scoundrel's fault. He looks at his brother, still sleeping like a baby, and begins casting a spell, thinking it's better to kill him now. He remembers the scene of his brother stabbing him in the back and telling him to stop being a nuisance, calling him trash, and laughing as he said he had a useless black mage as an older brother. Kai grows furious, recalling all of that. He also remembers his brother from when they were children, competing with him for Kolit's affection, while she innocently smiled. The protagonist thinks that if he kills Ares like this, his beloved will surely be disappointed. Suddenly, Griselda calls out to him, asking what he's doing. Kai closes his eyes and starts analyzing the situation, leaving Griselda intrigued. The three stand there in front of Ares, and suddenly the protagonist hits his own forehead, invoking a spell which confuses Griselda. Suddenly, a creature forms on the protagonist's forehead, and the creature starts moving, and out of nowhere enters Ares' mouth. Griselda and Sasha are astonished by this, and Sasha screams that the thing went into his mouth. Griselda asks if it was a curse, and the protagonist replies that she hit the nail on the head. Soon, the curse begins to take over Ares, and his face starts changing color. Griselda, curious, asks what kind of curse Kai used. Kai just watches his brother, who remains still, and says it's a curse that will turn his life into a living hell. Sasha asks about turning Ares' life into hell, and the protagonist quickly replies that she'll understand soon enough. The curse continues to take over Ares, and Griselda approaches him to get a closer look. She is impressed by the curse and says it is splendid. Sasha, a bit nervous, comments that not even demons have mastered that kind of dark magic, and that this Kai is becoming more and more suspicious. Kai feels a bit awkward and starts sweating, unable to explain himself. Suddenly, he begins to notice the girls, and when he sees Griselda's short dress and the low neckline of Sasha's large chest, he blushes and says they need some clothes. Both of them get embarrassed and start turning red as well. Kai then proclaims a dark magic called Wallach's wardrobe, and a sort of portal appears. Kai puts his hand inside and says there should be something for them to wear. He then pulls out some clothes and, showing them to the girls, says it would be better if they changed somewhere else. The two then start going upstairs. Once in a room, Griselda, with her arms raised, tells Sasha she can dress herself, and Sasha asks Kai to please wait in another room. The protagonist feels embarrassed and tells them to relax, as he won't look at anything. He turns his back and starts thinking that it's almost noon, and soon his brother will receive the hero class, and all the damage he's taken will be completely healed thanks to the hero class, except for the curse he cast. Kai begins to walk, thinking that the real problem will actually be the sacred sword. Soon, Griselda calls him, and he promptly looks. She is delighted with the dress and feels great wearing it. Gratefully, she says it's the first time she's worn something like that, and Kai, smiling, responds that she looks beautiful. She immediately blushes and shyly thanks him for the compliment. Sasha soon appears and, disappointed, says she can't believe Kai made Griselda wear a maid's outfit. Griselda, on the other hand, excited, says that Sasha looks beautiful in the dress too, and Sasha thanks her. The protagonist interrupts the two, asking if they could give him a moment of their attention. They both promptly look at him attentively, and he says he has something he needs to explain to them. They sit down, and after the protagonist explains everything, Griselda is shocked and asks if it's true, all that he said about coming from 5 years in the future, and that she was the Demon King. Kai explains that it wasn't just that, and continues saying that he was killed by his brother in the future and betrayed by the hero's group. Completely nervous as he recalls it, the protagonist says that's why he doesn't trust the hero or any humans anymore. Sasha, remembering the healing magic she received, says that now she understands why he has those magical abilities. With a serious expression, she continues, saying that the fact that Griselda turned into the Demon King is quite credible. Griselda turns to her, surprised to hear that. With a confident smile, Griselda says that if Kai were trying to trap them, he probably would have come up with a better lie, and besides, he saved them in the first place. Kai feels embarrassed by this, and Griselda continues, asking what he's going to do now. With determination in his eyes, Kai says that now he will destroy Elsa. Griselda is astonished to hear this, and quickly asks if it's true. She begins to explain that Elsa enslaved her people and is stealing the valuable resources from her territory. And lowering her head, she continues saying that, at that very moment, her people are suffering. Kai places his hand on his chest and firmly says he will reclaim that territory. Griselda's eyes shine at this, and she asks if he can really save her people. Kai simply nods in agreement. She starts crying with relief and, barely able to speak, says she's so happy because she will be able to honor her late father. Sasha, also crying, agrees with her friend. Kai, with clenched fists, asks if, in return, they can allow him and Khalid to live there, explaining that Khalid is his fiancé. Griselda appears somewhat disappointed and comments that now she understands what he meant when he asked for a partnership, adding that if it's just that, they can live there peacefully. Kai mentions that Khalid will receive the Saint class today. Griselda can't believe what she hears and responds that if he runs off with the Saint, the Sacred Kingdom will send an army after him. Kai retorts that he will handle it alone, and, in the future, if the Sacred Kingdom attacks them, he will... Suddenly, the ground begins to shake intensely. Kai quickly realizes what's happening, and out of nowhere, the house they were in starts collapsing, with debris flying everywhere. But Kai swiftly grabs the two young women and runs out before they're hit. After reaching a safe distance, he stops and looks back. The two girls, in shock, ask how he got them out so fast. Suddenly, someone begins to emerge from the flames, and the fire spreads all over the place. Kai says the time has come and asks them to stay behind him. Griselda is terrified by the situation, while Sasha holds her, trying to calm her down. Griselda, scared, asks if he was really that fast. The house quickly becomes just a pile of burning rubble, and from the midst of the flames, someone emerges with a horrifying smile. It's Ares, laughing uncontrollably, asking how Kai is doing. Kai remains serious, determined, and as he starts to prepare his magic, he greets his brother. Ares, still smiling, says his brother seems angry, but suddenly he notices the heraldry on Kai's hand and is stunned. Looking closely at the mark, he asks if he really is a black mage, and showing his own heraldry to Kai, says it's a shame. The hero candidate Kai ended up with the worst class possible, and, proudly displaying his heraldry, Ares says he received the hero class. The protagonist begins to think that this heraldry and the vital resurrection ability completely healed Ares. Ares, grinning, says he's beaten his brother, and now it's his time to shine. Griselda, outraged, says that it's unacceptable for trash like Ares to be the hero. Ares, the messenger of chaos, comments that his brother knocked him down earlier, and now he's going to return the favor. Displaying his heraldry again, he says he didn't expect to receive it. Ares then proclaims, summoning the sacred sword Durandal, and a giant lightning bolt appears in the sky, striking right on him. Ares then reveals his sword, which is enormous and powerful. He says that it is the hero's sword, proof of his worthiness. The protagonist just watches silently. The girls are in shock at the sight of the sword, and Sasha comments that she can feel an overwhelming amount of magic emanating from it, while Griselda says that perhaps even Kai isn't a match for that sacred sword. The protagonist is furious upon realizing that the sword, Durandal, is the same sacred sword that killed him in his previous life. Ares, still laughing, says that Kai can start crying and begging for forgiveness, but Kai, calmly, points out that his brother is pointing a sword at him. Ares asks if he still hasn't realized the difference between them, a black mage and a hero, and, pointing his sword, he says that no one can defeat the all-powerful sacred sword. He tells Kai to repent for challenging the absolute representative of justice, the hero. The protagonist then begins to walk toward him, telling Ares to stop the nonsense and get ready for a fight. With a fiery look in his eyes, he exclaims that he's going to show Ares what hell really is. Ares is astonished to hear that from a mere dark mage. Kai then looks at him and nods, calling his brother to the fight. Confident, he says he will break that sacred sword that Ares is so proud of, and that when he loses to a dark mage, he won't even be able to show his face in public. Ares wastes no time and exclaims that his brother really wants to die. He advances quickly, sword in hand. He attempts a strike, which is easily dodged by Kai. As he dodges, the protagonist concludes that the sword indeed possesses a lot of magic. Ares continues to attack relentlessly, while the protagonist calmly dodges, thinking that despite all the power of the sword, it is a waste with Ares' weak fencing skills. Ares then stops attacking, exhausted, while the protagonist calmly approaches him. The hero wonders why Kai only dodges and does not counterattack. While reflecting, the protagonist realizes that even though his brother is the hero, in the end, he is still at level 1. Suddenly, the protagonist hears a notification sound, and while dodging another attack, a notification alerts him that he received a hidden class in his past life called Black Star. Kai is dumbfounded by this and wonders what that hidden class is. Suddenly, Ares comes flying to attack Kai, who is distracted reading about his hidden class. The notification says that this is a special class available only to those who mastered the Dark Mage class in a life, and the Black Star class allows him to learn all dark attribute skills. Kai continues to read calmly, while his brother persistently tries to strike. The system says that if Ares commits evil acts, he will earn evil points to exchange for skills. The protagonist then realizes that he needs to be evil to get the skills. Suddenly, another notification appears, congratulating him, which surprises Kai. The system says he committed a wonderful evil act and will receive 1,000 evil points. Kai doesn't understand why he received the points, as he doesn't remember doing anything malicious. The system explains that he helped demons and turned against the hero. Dodging another blow, Kai understands why he received the points and says he's okay with that. The system then announces that it will show the currently available skills to compare. In the skill menu, summoning the demonic sword costs 1,000 points, Deathbearer costs 500, Shadow Clone 300, Dark Mind 100, Wave of Darkness 100 points, Blood Violence also costs 100, and Life Absorption also 100. Kai is amazed at the options and doesn't think twice. He uses the summoning of the demonic sword. The system alerts him that he spent 1,000 points to acquire the skill. Throughout all this, Ares was still trying to hit Kai, and annoyed, he asked the protagonist to look at him. Kai replies that he is too slow, and thus it will be difficult to hit him. Ares, even more irritated, calls him cursed. Suddenly, the mark on Kai's hand begins to emit a dark energy, and he summons the demonic sword, Tilfing, causing the ground to tremble and begin to open. Out of nowhere, a sword emerges from the crack in the ground with an absurd dark energy, leaving Ares in shock. The protagonist picks up the sword and reflects that now he understands why that sword is the favorite of the Demon King Griselda. He remembers that that sword scales the user's attack based on his dark magic, being the perfect weapon for him, who is a dark mage at level 999. Ares, frightened by all that power in front of him, with a trembling voice, asks what evil sword that was. Kai lifts his sword and looks at it closely, realizing it is absorbing his magic. The sword begins to emit a terrifying magic, and the protagonist concludes that this sword is indeed greedy. Griselda and Sasha are in shock watching this, and Griselda says that it is certainly the demonic sword of her father. Ares, scared out of his wits, wonders about that demonic sword. Kai then moves his sword from side to side quickly, leaving Ares even more confused. He, smiling, asks what the protagonist is trying to attack. With just that movement, Kai cut absolutely everything in the path of his sword, and Ares, turning around, notices that everything behind him has been destroyed. Kai, looking at the sword, says he still doesn't know how to control all its strength. Ares, astonished by all that power, begins to scream, asking what that was and what ability it was. The protagonist, looking attentively at the sword, thinks that, in fact, the sword is converting his magic into destructive power. Out of nowhere, Ares, who is scared, begins to laugh, and chuckling, says that Kai had scared him for a moment. He asks if Kai had forgotten the strength of the attributes. He explains that the attribute of the sacred sword is light, and of the demonic sword is darkness, and when a light attribute fights against darkness, its power doubles. Ares then prepares for combat and, pointing his sword, says that there is the proof as the light attribute of his sword, Durandal, is becoming increasingly intense. Kai thinks that the sacred sword is really very powerful. Ares, confident, says he will show his brother the true power of the sacred sword. The sacred sword emits a thunderous energy, shining intensely. Kai is not intimidated and calls his brother to the fight. Ares, furious, yells for his brother to die and launches the attack using the final cut skill. Suddenly, a huge energy begins to move towards the protagonist. Sasha covers her eyes with the intensity of the glow, while Griselda is astonished by the gigantic amount of magical power and asks Kai to dodge it. The energy comes inches from Kai, and only a huge explosion is seen. When the dust settles, only the damage on the ground is seen, leaving Sasha and Griselda apprehensive about Kai. Ares sighs in relief and starts to laugh, saying that not even a piece of his brother remains to tell the story. He continues saying that from today on, this will be his era and everything will be his. Money, status, honor, and everything else. Licking his lips, he says that the women will also be his, including the wonderful Colette. Griselda falls to her knees, shaken, saying that Kai cannot have died like that. Ares looks at her and says that, by the way, they should be running at that moment. Sasha also kneels and hugs her friend, while Aries says that now it's their turn. Suddenly, Kai appears out of nowhere, thinking he was waiting for that moment. With blood in his eyes, he asks if his brother really thought he had already won. Aries almost has a heart attack, unable to believe what he is seeing. The protagonist looks at the sword, Duraldal, and reflects that normally a demonic sword wouldn't even scratch the sacred sword. But after using the final cut, the sacred sword temporarily loses its magic. He remembers having witnessed Ares frustrated with the weakness of the sacred sword several times in his past life. Kai then wastes no time and charges, saying that it's time for the hero's sword to disappear from the world. He strikes with great force, contemplating that he must be able to destroy that sword. Ares manages to block the strike, but with the impact, his sword begins to crack and breaks. Ares, flying with the impact of the blow, wonders how that was possible. He then falls to the ground so hard that he spits blood with the blow. Kai takes a deep breath and says that now he understands why it is called a demonic sword, as the amount of magic it consumes is absurd, and with that, he can only use it for a maximum of 15 minutes. The protagonist reflects that if he had used it at level 1, he would have killed himself instantly. He realizes that the hidden class Black Star he gained in this second life will be quite problematic. Suddenly, a notification sounds, and the system congratulates him for having destroyed the sacred sword and defeated the hero. The system alerts that he will receive 3,000 evil points. The two girls feel relieved with Kai's victory. Griselda screams happily that he is alive and has managed to defeat that guy. The protagonist looks at them and smiles, picking up his sword. The three go to where Ares, who remains motionless lying on the ground, and Kai comments that he is still breathing. Griselda looks confused at the hero and asks if he will not wake up anytime soon. She thinks they don't need to worry, as his vital revitalization can only be used once a day. Suddenly, the curse that Kai had placed on his brother begins to activate. Griselda, excited, screams, warning the others. The curse starts to approach the hero's mark, and the protagonist explains that every time Ares tries to hurt someone, the curse will transform the heraldry of light into heraldry of darkness. As the curse transforms the mark, Kai continues explaining that the heraldry of light is proof of a hero, and it requires honor and glory, the opposite of the heraldry of darkness. In that scene of destruction, the protagonist says that from now on, Ares will be known as a false hero, and this will also be the ruin of the Austen family's reputation. He emphasizes that this is his revenge against Ares and his father, and also against those who took his life. And with that curse and the destruction of the sacred sword, the hero Ares dies there. The day begins to dawn, and Kai comments that soon that place will become busy. Out of nowhere, Griselda approaches him, calling him Kai-sama. The protagonist is confused about the sama, and Griselda says that now that he has destroyed the sacred sword and defeated the hero, no one can deny it. With a determined look, she says that Kai-sama is the hero of the demons, the new demon king, leaving the protagonist startled by those words. At the same time, in a calm field, Colette's horse stops to drink water, while she wonders what Kai must be doing. A small demon responds, saying that she doesn't need to worry, as he must be preventing the birth of the demon king. Colette says she just hopes he doesn't get hurt, and the demon emphasizes that no one in this world is a match for Kai-sama. With the demon in her lap, she calls him Archdemon San, and says he's right. She comments that she was surprised when she saw that he could get so tiny. The small demon begins to fly, and explains that that form is just a disguise, and he can definitely protect her fully. Colette, enchanted, says that his wings are very cute. San suddenly notices people coming down the road, and says that they are the holy knights from the capital, so they must hide. Colette asks why, and the demon explains that upon noticing that the most powerful saint has disappeared, they must have sent knights to look for her. Concerned, she says she understands. Colette lowers her head, asking in her thoughts for Kai to hurry. Meanwhile, Griselda was calling Kai the Demon King, which leaves him speechless. Astonished, Kai asks if he is the Demon King, which she promptly confirms. The protagonist pushes the young woman away, asking her to calm down, and explains that just because he can use the demonic sword doesn't mean he is the new Demon King. Griselda asks what he was talking about, and with eyes shining fascinated, she says that the invocation of the demonic sword is a skill reserved only for those with the class of Demon King, and that was proof that cannot be denied. Sasha, seriously, confirms and emphasizes that he was able to destroy the sacred sword and defeat the hero, which are feats that only the all-powerful Demon King can accomplish, and therefore, Kai-sama has earned the right to receive the title of the most powerful Demon King in history. Kai looks at the young women in front of him and reflects that now he has a problem, as apparently both think he is the Demon King. Kai starts to reflect on the matter and thinks that, in fact, the demons would accept him more easily this way. He thinks that this is a good idea. Griselda interrupts his thoughts, exclaiming that now that they know he is the Demon King, there's one thing left to do: sign a demonic subordination pact. The protagonist remains silent, looking like he didn't understand a word, and Griselda questions if he doesn't know what that means. She explains that the subordination pact is a special ability of the Demon King, and those who adhere to the pact gain special classes from the Demon King and have their power immensely increased. She continues saying that, in exchange, the demons swear absolute loyalty to the Demon King. Kai exclaims "open status," and 3 screens appear in front of him. Looking at the screens, he says that apparently he doesn't have that subordination ability. Tinkering with the system, he notices that the abilities he can purchase have increased, and he finally finds the demonic subordination pact, with the condition for its use being the destruction of the hero's sword, which he has already accomplished in the previous battle. Kai then looks at the new classes that this pact can grant. The first class is that of a Demon Captain, which increases attack power by 20% and can provide 1 ability. The Demon Captain class can only be given to 16 people. The second class is that of a Demon General, which increases all stats by 50% and can provide 2 abilities. This class can be given to 8 people. The third class is called 4 Celestial Kings. It increases all stats by 100% and can provide 3 abilities, but this class can only be given to 4 people. Kai thinks that he finally understood why the leader of the Demon King's army had such extraordinary strength. It was all because of the subordination pact. Other system screens appear, and one of them says that as a result of the signing of the subordination pact between the 2 parties, the class will be transferred. The class can also be removed if the pact is destroyed. The system also makes a note that death will come to those who rebel against the Demon King. Kai becomes apprehensive after reading about this death for traitors and asks if that pact is really serious. Griselda responds affirmatively and says she will swear loyalty to the new Demon King, as that was her father's will. She opens her arms, contemplating that Kai is a good person and that she has no doubts about it. Kai closes his eyes, saying he understands. Determined, he asks if they agree. The 2 young women kneel, saying it would be an honor. Kai then makes the pact and, showing the symbol of the general class, tells Sasha that he will give her that class. Sasha becomes apprehensive and asks if he is sure. Griselda promptly touches her shoulder, saying that this is good. She explains that demon generals are not chosen just for their battle power, but also for loyalty, making it perfect for her. Sasha, however, is unsure about this and remains tense. The protagonist then asks if she accepts. She closes her eyes and, firmly, pleads for Kai-sama to grant her the glory of being a demon general, and she will give him her absolute loyalty. Kai then says, so be it. He extends his hand, transferring the demon general class to her. Soon, the mark begins to appear on her hand, and an immense power begins to take over her entire body, making her say she is overflowing. Griselda is impressed with so much power emanating from her friend. Kai is also amazed and thinks it's incredible that with that, she has become a demon general. Griselda, with a determined look, asks the protagonist to also give her strength to protect the demons and grant her the glorious Celestial King class, swearing loyalty to him. The protagonist looks at the young woman kneeling with that focused gaze and thinks that Griselda is different, for even if he does not give her a class, she certainly has the potential to become a demon king, and he can expect great deeds from her. Looking at his hand, he reflects that he never imagined that he would make a subordination pact with the Demon King one day. He then extends his hand over Griselda's head and proclaims that he gives her the Celestial King class. Suddenly, a terrifyingly huge dark energy forms, visible from afar. Kai and Sasha are stunned watching it, making Kai feel a chill. Griselda's entire body is taken over by an absurd magic, filling the environment with so much power, causing the young woman to tremble. Sasha then shouts for her friend, worried, but Griselda jumps for joy, saying they did it, and now part of the great power of Kai-sama is inside her, making her one of the 4 Celestial Kings. The protagonist just observes admiringly, thinking that this is expected of the Demon King Griselda. Sasha gets excited and congratulates her friend, who responds proudly that they managed to escape the hero and even became servants of Kai-sama. Sasha seems a bit upset and comments that she also hopes to be useful. Griselda promptly shouts that yes, and stresses that they will become even more powerful and will build a new world of demons with the protagonist. Kai watches the scene and concludes relieved that he managed to defeat Ares, and now the Demon King is his companion. Suddenly, he notices something. A troop was approaching in his direction, and at the forefront was his father with a furious look. Drawing his sword, he asks his son to explain the whole situation. Completely distraught, he continues asking what Ares is doing on the ground and what he is doing with those demons. Quickly steps forward, and Griselda comments that that man has a firm stance. She asks who he is, and Ares answers that he is the commander of the Order of Holy Knights, his father. Without wasting time, the knights go up to Ares, who is lying on the ground, and one of them checks his breathing, soon affirming that Ares is breathing. Kai's father, still maintaining a battle stance, points out that the protagonist did not appear at the class revelation ceremony and asks what he was doing. With a mocking smile, Kai replies that he became a dark mage. His father is taken aback by this and quickly retorts that he was supposed to be a hero. The protagonist shows the heraldry on his hand and declares that from now on, he will be striving to be a demon king. His father is terrified by those words and begins to shout, saying, "That is the black heraldry." He asks if he really became a dark mage. Astonished, he emphasizes to Kai not to joke about becoming a demon king. Out of control, he yells, asking if Kai has lost the justice that was in his heart, as he was the pride of the Austin family. The protagonist clenches his fist and, remembering the deeds of his brother Ares, responds that he has witnessed the justice of the Austin family more times than he would like, which includes tortures and threats, in addition to the fact that they hid the birth of the Demon King. Kai remembers the harsh words of his father and continues saying that he had expelled his own son from home and commanded his death, and that is the justice of the Austin family. With determination in his voice, Kai affirms that if that is being just, he prefers to be evil. The patriarch responds that Kai has been corrupted by that filthy class and that he will not escape unpunished. Kai is undaunted and says that his father does not need to worry, as he and the Austin family will no longer be of any use. He then snaps his fingers and exclaims, "Expel." Suddenly, flames appear everywhere behind the knights, leaving them terrified. Geese quickly turns around and sees flames consuming everything around him. He asks what kind of magic this is, and his subordinates inform him that the situation is dire, as the area surrounding the mansion is being ravaged by fire. A citizen yells that the flames are spreading fast and begins to flee, warning that the stable is also ablaze. The man turns to the protagonist and demands to know what the hell he did. Griselda questions Kai about when he prepared all of this, and he explains that he did it while searching for them. He details that he made sure to prepare the fire, ensuring that no one would be trapped by the flames. Suddenly, the system congratulates him for setting his parents' house on fire, commenting that it was a magnificent evil act and rewards him with 500 points. Kai thinks he got lucky, as he hadn't expected that, and concludes that the system aligns well with vengeance. The protagonist then acquires the skill Dark Attribute Reinforcement. With each level up, his dark power will increase by 1%. Kai's father, still furious, asks how he could have done such a thing. Kai promptly responds that the Austin family must be destroyed. With his gaze fixed on his father, he declares that this is his form of justice. Enraged, Geese calls him a bastard and orders his subordinates to kill Kai, saying that this monster is no longer his son. The soldiers, armed with spears, quickly surround Kai. They start attacking the protagonist, who cuts through them as if they were nothing, leaving only a trail behind. He looks back and orders the soldiers to sleep. Suddenly, his father charges at him with hatred in his eyes and sword in hand. He shouts at Kai not to get cocky, as those were just disposable pawns. Kai quickly summons his sword, Thilfing, and challenges his father to a fight. The sword materializes in the protagonist's hand, and the two clash their blades, bravely testing their strength. Geese is astonished by the power of his son's sword, while Kai remains steadfast. Suddenly, his father pulls his sword back, but as he prepares a new strike, he realizes Kai is already poised for another attack. Kai strikes fiercely with his sword, brutally severing his father's arm. The man, in disbelief, screams as he sees his arm fall to the ground. He collapses, while one of his knights runs to him, concerned, holding the commander's sword. Geese wonders if the sword wielded by his son is truly the demon sword, and contemplates that his son has abandoned any trace of humanity. The man then grabs the sword with his other hand and drives it into the ground, attempting to use knightly healing, claiming this skill would restore his arm. However, he soon realizes that the ability has no effect, leaving him terrified. Kai calmly explains that the Eternal Blood skill is a magic that prevents any form of healing. He recalls that it's a high-level magic that only level 850 black mages can learn, and that he cast it the moment he cut his father. He tells his father that not even a saint could heal him. The protagonist looks at his father kneeling on the ground and states that he stopped the bleeding as a final act of mercy. Furious, his father retorts that Kai had just received that class and questions how he could cast such magic. Kai ignores the question and says that a warrior who has lost his dominant arm is as useless as a $3 bill. With a hollow gaze, Kai declares that his father's justice has no more power. Writhing in pain, Geese asks how Kai could do this to his own father. The protagonist recalls when he was forcibly separated from his beloved and the moment of his death in the future, when Ares revealed that his father had ordered his execution. Kai closes his eyes and exclaims that his father ordered his death in the past. Geese, confused, asks what his son is talking about. Suddenly, the system congratulates him again, explaining that Kai had left his father wounded beyond any healing, and for that, he received another 500 points. Meanwhile, Geese looks at his son Ares, who is still lying on the ground, and a wicked smile forms on his face as he thinks he finally understands. And, still gazing at Ares, he realizes that Ares is the hero, not Kai. The man shouts that Ares will surely be blessed with the hero title, as St. Johann's prophecy is absolute. The protagonist merely watches the scene in silence. His father starts to laugh and yells for them to heal Ares, as, together with the hero, they can surely defeat that evil dark mage. A soldier approaches Ares, but, terrified, points to his body. Geese turns around, asking what's wrong, and is completely paralyzed upon noticing that Ares also bears a dark heraldry. He cannot comprehend how this is possible since Johann's prophecy was supposed to be infallible. The The protagonist, observing this, thinks that his father is partially correct, and that Saint Johann's prophecy indeed did not fail, for Aries received the hero class. However, due to the curse Kai cast on his brother, the light heraldry is being masked by the Dark One. The Prota then reflects that Johann is the greatest threat to his plan. He remembers the prophet saying that having an evil dark mage among the best classes, even if it was a trial sent by God, was still an absurdity. Kai considers that Johann's unique prophecy skill allows him to see fragments of the future every 7 days. Thus, he needs to get rid of the prophet as soon as possible. Kai snaps back to reality and, looking at his father, asks if he will also cast Aries out. He points out that all his father's efforts resulted in demonic classes, and that this marks the end of the esteemed Austen family. Outraged, his father screams that this would never happen, that it could only be a nightmare. On his knees, head bowed, he wonders what will become of the glory of the Austen family now. One of his soldiers asks what they should do with Aries, inquiring if he should cast a recovery spell. Guy screams that it's not necessary and calls Aries filthy. He exclaims that the Austen family does not need dark classes and would rather see him dead. The protagonist looks at Aries and thinks his father is a fool, since Aries is, in fact, a hero of light who will now lose his noble status. Kai concludes that he has finally completed his first objective and that his mission here is over. He bids farewell to his father, turns his back, and starts to walk away. With a choked voice, the Prota's father asks if Kai will really side with the demons, for he is the eldest of the Austen family. Kai immediately replies yes, leaving his father stunned. Remembering the moment of his death in the past, Kai concludes by stating that, indeed, he will join the demons. He recalls Colette and concludes that she is the only human he can trust. The Prota then approaches Griselda and Sasha, calling them to leave. The two look at Kai with admiration, and he reflects that they have shown him that even demons have hearts. He considers them radiant, especially for someone like him who has experienced the worst side of humanity. Kai glances once more at his father, who remains on his knees despairing, and says goodbye. Kai and the girls then leave the mansion, and as they pass through the gate, a guard asks Kai what happened inside. The protagonist tells the guard to inform his father that he doesn't need to watch him leave. The guard tries to ask what's going on, but before he can finish his sentence, Kai looks at him firmly and states that he will kill anyone his father sends after him. The guard is left in shock upon hearing this, while Kai says he's counting on him. Immediately after, Kai uses the instant step skill and vanishes, leaving the guard bewildered, unable to comprehend. Suddenly, they appear in a different place near a lake. Griselda and Sasha are completely astonished by the sudden change in location. The Prota smiles and urges them to keep moving forward. Sasha looks back, marveling at how useful that magic is, as it quickly took them far away, and Griselda approaches Kai, complimenting him for not showing any compassion, not even toward his own father. Kai smiles and thanks the young woman. With a gleam in her eyes, Griselda asks if they are heading to demon territory. He replies yes, that they need to hurry, but first, they must go to Lacus village, where Colette awaits them. Suddenly, he has an idea and says that, just to be sure, he will strengthen the two girls. Griselda, confused, asks if they can get even stronger. Kai then extends his hand and begins using his magic, saying he will lend them the level 10 dark attribute enhancement. The two young women feel the full force entering their bodies, and Griselda comments that she feels an intense heat rising from within, while Sasha says it's far too stimulating for her. Looking at Griselda, Kai reflects that this is one of the abilities of the Subordination Pact, which allows him to lend abilities to his subordinates. He observes Sasha, who is absorbing the power, and concludes that the abilities he lends do not disappear from his list. Rather, they are being shared. Sasha then collapses to her knees, exhausted, and thanks the Prota, while Griselda can barely stand. Seeing this, Kai apologizes and suggests that they should rest a bit. The two young women were worn out. They sit on fallen tree trunks to catch their breath. Putting his hand in his pocket, Kai wonders if Colette is okay. He then takes out the bracelet and, looking at it, thinks that although this gift is broken, it still emanates powerful magic. Suddenly, he remembers the item analysis skill, which allows the user to see attributes and use any item. This skill costs 500 evil points. He uses the skill on the bracelet, and the information revealed is Time Bracelet, a bracelet that responds to the prayers of those who wish to see their loved ones again. It contains the magic of the Saint of Time. This item has already lost its time control magic, increases the wearer's magical defense by 5%. Kai then understands that, just as he suspected, it was thanks to the bracelet's power that he was granted a second chance. He remembers when Colette gave him the bracelet, and with tears in her eyes, she said they would meet again. The Prota grips the object tightly and thinks that the Austen family and everyone who separated them have been destroyed, and now the future will change. Kai then ponders about the Saint of Time and wonders if Colette has a hidden class, just like him, for she was not just a saint. Regardless, he needs to reunite with Colette as soon as possible. Suddenly, Griselda interrupts his thoughts, asking if there's a problem. Kai responds that everything is fine, and that they can move forward cautiously. With determination, he silently asks Colette to wait for him. Elsewhere, a servant reveals information to his superior. The mysterious man thanks him for the information and praises him for his good work. This man is Prophet Johann, who with a wicked smile declares that he has finally found the Saint of Time. That's all, folks. If you enjoy the video, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks. That's all, folks. If you enjoy the video, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks.